Good day. This is Kelly Giles, and you're watching Republic Nation News Podcast. Today with us, we have Aaron Reitz, and Aaron is running for Attorney General in the state of Texas. So welcome, Aaron.
I'm happy to be here, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we're excited. And Aaron, I think, our audience up here in the Panhandle, I think the first thing they'd like to know is tell us where you're born and raised and kind of where you came from.
So both my wife and I are from San Antonio. We actually met on the school bus in middle school and went to middle school, high school together. We started dating senior year of high school. I went off to A&M. She went off to UT, believe it or not. Got engaged in college, got married right after we graduated. I'm a proud Aggie. She loves the Longhorns. Spent my first years right out of undergrad as an officer in the Marine Corps. And so commissioned as an officer, was all over the place for a little while. Virginia, North Carolina, Southern California. Ended up deploying to Afghanistan, to the northern Helmand province. I was on an embedded training team, lived with the
About what year was that?
So I was in Afghanistan from fall of 11 to spring of 12.
Okay.
Right? And it was a blast. It was fun.
And what part of the service were you in?
I was in the Marines, so I was an officer in the Marine Corps. Yeah, 9/11 happened when I was a freshman in high school, and I didn't come from a military background. Just sort of a loving, average, middle class family in San Antonio. No record of military service, but when that happened, it sort of set me on a trajectory I wanted to serve. I felt like other young men were signing up to go do it. I felt like I wanted to do it. I'd regret not doing it later in life if I didn't. And so I went to Texas A&M. Yeah, I did the Corps of Cadets there. Didn't really appreciate the big differences between the services just because I didn't have that background. Mm-hmm. And so I go to A&M and I get exposure to Air Force, Army, Marines, at Navy, and I realized, man, I got to be a Marine. They're the best in my opinion. And so I put in for an ROTC package, commissioned as an officer, and we were all over the place. Look, I spent 5 years on active duty. I missed my oldest son. He's 14 now, mm-hmm. and he was born when I was in Afghanistan. So I met him when he was 5 months old when I came home, and that's when I kind of knew, God calls some people to do their 5-year service. Sometimes he calls people to do 20 or 30 years, and decided that I wanted to try out law school, went to law school and was in private practice and then served as Paxton's deputy. And
where'd you go to law school?
I went to UT for law school.
Right.
So at the moment in the Reitz family, we have more UT degrees than we have A&M degrees. But as I tell folks, I've got 4 kids. All 4 of them will likely go to Texas A&M. Who knows? Maybe West Texas A&M, if they come on out here. And we'll have more A&M degrees soon enough than we do have UT degrees. Yeah. So
you've got both factions covered.
We've got both factions covered, yeah. And in politics, you have to have you got to give everybody a little bit, right?
That was good pre-planning.
Yeah, it wasn't. I guess that's where the hindsight was, or the foresight, I guess, back then was spot on. So
well, very good. Well, so kind of walk us through, how did you go from military, law degree, and then how did you wind up working for Ken Paxton?
Yeah, well, look, I not only do I not come from a family background of military service, I don't have any lawyers in the family either. And so in many ways, I'm kind of carving a different path. But I'd always been interested in the law, always been interested in sort of constitutional questions. Public service always meant a lot to me. When I joined the Marines, I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all of our enemies, foreign and domestic. And that sort of same spirit of wanting to fight to advance our constitutional values was both, animated me both in uniform and then as a civilian, as a lawyer. So I went to law school. I clerked on the Texas Supreme Court for the now Chief Justice Jimmy Blacklock. I then went into private practice for several years. Finally, made money for the first time in my life. And that was nice. But I was on the sidelines, not fighting for the things that I cared about. It was good work, like great law firms, interesting legal questions. But I'm the kind of guy that has to be in the arena. I got to be fighting actively to advance the things that we conservative Republicans care about. Now, I had gotten to know Ken Paxton sort of in 2018, 2019 or so, just building a relationship, exchanged phone numbers. And in 2020, I reached out to him. I said, look, I got to get back in the fight. I'd love to join your team in some way. And so we talked in 2020. He then hired me in October of 2020. I joined him, and I became his deputy very quickly. Biden got sworn in. I led all the Texas v. Biden litigation. I sued the 46th president 46 times. I won 85% of those cases. So I was Paxton's deputy for 3 years, Ted Cruz's chief for 2 years, and then got the call down to Mar-a-Lago to visit with the president. He nominated me to serve as the head of the Office of Legal Policy at DOJ.
What year was that?
That was November and December of 24, so
okay.
Fairly recent. So Trump won in November of 24. He won in November of 2020, by the way. We did what we could to make that right, but Biden ended up getting sworn in despite my best efforts to fix that. And so he put out a statement about me in December of 2024, nominating me to head up the Office of Legal Policy at the Justice Department. And in his statement, he said, Aaron Reitz is a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. Now, look, I think that's a good description of what our next Attorney General ought to be. I had to go through Senate confirmation. Proud to say I got 0 Democrat votes. In fact, I got confirmed, but a long party line vote. And when I got confirmed, the senior Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, he put out a press release about me. And in that press release is Dick Durbin from Illinois. He put out a press release about me. He said, Aaron Reitz is a danger to democracy and a menace to the rule of law. Which, I mean, look, out of the mouth of a Democrat, I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. Like, I actually take it as a compliment if that's what you think about me. And then, I went to DOJ, spent the spring season there, but in close consultation with the White House, with Paxton, with my mentors, with grassroots leaders here in Texas, with the White House, all these people. It became clear that when Paxton announced that he was not going to be running for re-election as AG, that he'd be pursuing his bid for the U.S. Senate, major questions arose. Who's going to succeed him as the next AG? And after several months of prayerful due diligence, it just made sense that we need somebody who has been battle-tested, who's been vetted by the president, who has been in the fight, who has a record leading legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories, somebody who has evidence of litigating, investigating, suing, defending, and appealing on all the major issues that we conservative Republicans care about. And I launched my bid for AG in June, and now here we are talking right in the middle of early voting, and everything is going really well. So that's where we are.
Well, good. Well, you covered a lot there.
Oh, well, there we go.
You must have had a little practice.
Well, yeah, I'm so used to talking about it's campaign season, baby. So
Okay, so for our listeners out there, for them to grab hold here, could you, in just very general terms, describe how you see the job description? Flesh it out for us. The new Attorney General, what will you be doing?
Well, this is a question that I get a lot on the campaign trail because we haven't had to choose in an open primary our Attorney General in over a decade, right? Paxton got elected in 2012. He's been overwhelmingly reelected several times. And it's been Paxton as our Attorney General. Texans have come to love and appreciate the role and the service that he has played in that position for over a decade. And so now the grassroots Republican primary voters are now asking that same question. Wait a second. We love what Paxton has done, but what is it exactly? What is this job? We're looking at a fresh slate of candidates.
Yeah.
What does he do? Well, Article 4, Section 22 of the Texas Constitution defines the job. And it says, quote, the Attorney General shall represent the state in all suits and pleas. What does that mean? It means that this is a legal law enforcement executive branch job, not a legislative job. And I point out that distinction for 2 reasons. Number one is we in the grassroots activist world, we often engage with the state government through a legislative lens, right? What happened during the legislative session? What good bills passed? What bad bills died? What amendments got added on? What enhancements got through the process? What did the governor sign into law? What was controversial? Hey, based upon this legislator's legislative record, do we want to reelect him or do we want to primary him or her? How do we rate him? Do we give him an A+ rating, a C rating? You see what I'm saying here? They often think about state politics through a legislative lens. It's important for the grassroots to remember that this is not a legislative job, right? The second reason why I point this out is because all 3 of my opponents in this race, it's a 4-way primary, all three of them are running exclusively on what they did in the legislature, which may or may not be good or bad, depending on how you see it. But it actually has nothing to do with the job that they're applying for. It doesn't make them bad people. It's just wholly irrelevant, has nothing to do with being the state's lawyer. Being the state's lawyer means representing the state of Texas, as the Texas Constitution says, throughout the justice system. It means that if state laws are being violated, or we have some suspicion that state laws are being violated, the Attorney General will first mount an investigation team to discern whether there's foul play, who's doing the wrong thing, whether it's a group of individuals or a single individual or entities, private companies, nonprofits, elected officials, you name it. Then, if the allegations of wrongdoing, of law breaking are credible, the Attorney General can then mount the initial stages of litigation in district court, in both state and federal courts around Texas, in some cases around the nation. And then we litigate it, right? If we win at the trial court, we may have to go up on appeal, even if we lose. We may not only be going on offense, but in many cases, we're on defense as well. When the state of Texas passes good legislation that we may be in agreement that we really like, guess what? The left is going to also mount its counter litigation strategy to try to block the enforcement of state law. And so you then need to have an attorney general who then mounts a successful defense to vindicate state law in court to prevent the left and their network of judges from striking these things down. So what you need in this position is somebody who has an actual record leading legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories. I don't care whether you've passed legislation. I've never passed a bill in my entire life. I've never been on a committee. I've never introduced an amendment. I've never cut deals with colleagues in a legislative body. That's not what I do. What I do is I lead litigation, investigations, appeals, and defenses to make sure that Texas is vindicated in court and to make sure that Texans' constitutional, statutory, and legal rights are vindicated in court. That's what I do. And so when voters are going to the polls now in early voting and they're looking at a crowded primary field and they're wondering, who's my champion that I want representing me in court? There's only one of us who has the battle scars to give you confidence that I'm it. This is why when Paxton endorsed me to succeed him as the next Attorney General, he said in his endorsement statement, Aaron Reitz is the only qualified candidate in the race. It's because I'm the only one that knows what I'm doing. And I hope that that's what gives voters confidence to vote for me.
Well, we appreciate that very much. And so let's shift gears just a little bit. All right. So we're big here on understanding and trying our best to advance as a constitutional republic and all that goes with that. And so not just in Texas, many other states too, there is this, we see it as a little bit of a threat to our constitutional republic, is Sharia law. Yeah. So we see that as something that's outside the constitutional republic. It's a rebellion, and it's a different form of governance than what we're used to. And so we know, that's an element. We like our laws and protections of the individual rights to extend to everybody. So, but we're very concerned about the rise and expansion of the promotion of Sharia law. Mm-hmm. Could you give us a little background on that and kind of tell us where the Attorney General's office is on that?
This is a huge issue around the state, Kelly. People talk about the Islamification of Texas all the time, and it's a real issue. If you look at just the number of first-generation hardcore Muslims coming from Muslim-majority countries directly into Texas, first-generation, unassimilated immigration into Texas. Texas is ground zero for the destination of where these people are coming. And then once you get one or two family members in, they can then begin the process of chain migration. They then move into the same communities. They then start to dominate, their local school boards, their local city councils, their homeowners associations, and it starts getting skewed in a matter of 5, 10, 15 years into overwhelming Muslim majority enclaves in Texas. It's happening primarily in the DFW area and in the Harris County area, but there are pockets that are now taking root in more rural communities, like where we're talking right now in Amarillo and in the Panhandle, because it goes more unnoticed in many ways, right? Everybody's talking about the Islamification that's happening in DFW and in the Houston area, but not as many people are talking about the smaller pocket, the smaller cells that they're setting up in the Panhandle around Amarillo or Lubbock or wherever it may be. It's a huge issue. It's such a huge issue that my very first broadcast commercial on the campaign trail earlier this spring was on the Islamification issue, because I want Texans to know, I want Republican primaries to know that I am dead serious about rolling back the trend of Islamification in Texas. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization.
It is not.
It is not compatible with Western civilization. Now, what can be done as the Attorney General? Well, my campaign promise from the beginning has been to treat the Islamists, the Sharia law pushers in Texas, the same way that the feds treated the mafia in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now, you'll recall, how many mob bosses did we put behind bars for committing murder? The answer is not a lot, because they're very sophisticated, right? They wipe their fingerprints off the weapons that they used to commit their heinous crimes. But what we got them on instead was a sort of bramble bush of process crimes, financial crimes, money laundering, human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, tax evasion, tax fraud, racketeering, right? All of these sorts of things where we smoked it out. We suffocated the mafia to the extent that they couldn't even really operate. And it was a million paper cuts that we got on them, to where if we couldn't get you on, murder, right, the accumulation of all of those processed and financial crimes, those administrative crimes, if you want to call it that, added up to decades and decades in prison, to where they couldn't even operate. There was no oxygen for them to breathe legally, right? And so it is there. The mafia was organized similarly to the way that the Sharia law pushers are organized. They have an exceptionally well-funded and sophisticated network of 501c3 nonprofits, 501c4 political action committees, shell corporations, grant-making entities, political candidates, sympathetic judges, legal entities, major sophisticated law firms that are able to do pro bono work for them. They are very firmly entrenched, and they have all the tools necessary to continue infiltrating our state. We need an attorney general who isn't just going to talk about stopping the Islamification, but an attorney general who knows how to wield those tools, those legal, administrative, statutory, and common law tools, to treat the Sharia law pushers like the feds treated the mafia. And we're going to smoke them out of Texas. Bottom line, we're going to hold them accountable in court. And if we don't do that, they're just going to self-deport. They can go back to their home countries. You've got any number of dozens of Muslim-majority countries where they can enjoy the blessings of Sharia law, whatever those things are. Or they can just go self-deport up to Ilhan Omar's district. I don't care, but they're not going to operate in Texas when I'm Attorney General, bottom line.
Well, the most practical acknowledgement of the differences is that a Muslim is welcome to come to the United States and practice the religion they like to practice. But if you, as a Christian, go to a Muslim country, you're not allowed to practice Christianity.
100%.
So that's really a blaring difference, and it kind of says it all.
And by the way, if I could just add, Kelly, we need to be clear here. The First Amendment protects freedom of religion, right? Mm-hmm. That means that you can believe whatever you want. It doesn't necessarily, in every instance, mean that you can do whatever you want. Right? You could be a Satanist. If I obviously don't agree, and I pray for their soul, and I hope that they find the Lord Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Obviously, that's what we want to do. We want to evangelize them and bring them into the faith. You can believe that Satan is your savior all you want. But what you can't do in America is use that as an excuse to engage in child sacrifice or witchcraft, right? You could believe whatever you want. It doesn't mean that you can practice whatever you want.
Right.
Same thing with the Muslims that are here. You want to believe in Muhammad? Great. You know what you can't do is you can't erect a parallel contravening legal system known as Sharia law. That political practice is antithetical, incompatible, and has no place in a constitutional republic in which we have a First Amendment. It's not welcome.
That's a great explanation. So along those lines, now as we advance to the private property rights and the investment from foreign corporations they especially like to buy land around our military institutions.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah.
And can you comment on what is our angle there on we got to respect private property rights, but at the same token, we got to protect our sovereignty.
Yes.
So how do we balance those two out, and how do we take care of those, say the Chinese buying farms and ranches encompassing military installations? What do we do?
Yeah, right. Well, look, I'll tell you that we talked just a moment ago about Islam. I believe that Islam is the greatest civilizational threat to the West, but China and its Chinese Communist Party is the greatest geopolitical threat to the United States right now. Bottom line, they are our great power competitor. They are targeting and infiltrating the United States from every angle. And we are just now beginning to wake up to the threats of the Great Red Dragon being present here in Texas. And just like you rightly said, Kelly, I mean, the Chinese Communist Party and CCP-affiliated corporate entities have been gobbling up Texas land for the past several years. I give the Texas legislature and the governor some credit for signing into law a ban on major land purchases from the CCP, as well as doing any contracting for critical infrastructure with CCP-related corporate entities. That's a really good development, but this gets back to a distinction that I made earlier. You can pass all of the laws that you want, and we can celebrate the passage of good laws, of which I applaud the banning of the CCP purchasing land in Texas in that manner. The critical question now is whether we have an attorney general, a chief legal officer, who can enforce those laws to make sure that it's actually not happening. You can have a signing ceremony that says China's not going to buy land in Texas. That's great. We're all going to celebrate, right? There's going to be the photo op, the signing ceremony, all that stuff. But the AG's job now moving forward is to enforce that. I'm proud to see Attorney General Paxton is already taking decisive action, investigating and actively litigating against entities that are affiliated with the CCP, that are engaged in our critical infrastructure and buying land, gobbling up land here in Texas. The next Attorney General is going to have to keep his foot on the gas and maybe even press it harder. And so I want to launch a full spectrum investigation to make sure all of these major land transactions are not being pushed or facilitated by CCP-affiliated entities. It is an existential geopolitical threat, and it can't happen in Texas. We need an AG who's going to chop the head off the Red Dragon, and the AG is uniquely positioned to wield those state laws that are now on the books offensively to make sure it doesn't happen.
So I'm in ranching, and have been. My family has been for 150 years.
Yeah.
So as we turn this around into a local, practical manner, so as we get down on the border, and the border ranchers, we all communicate with each other as to what's going on. So as we look at the cartel infiltration coming across the border, we have great concern about how they will influence elections in the county sheriffs, elections in our county judges and district judges along that border. We have a lot of concern about that. Physically, there are a lot of reports of, we call them the black Cadillacs, but hit squads coming across, being on this side of the border, and doing what they do. A lot of ranchers, on a regular, I won't say regular basis, but frequent basis, find dead bodies hung up in trees, people decapitated and left behind. They're kind of overwhelmed.
Yes.
And they don't know what to do. We have some relationships that actually on their ranch have to build an electric fence, a high electric fence around their living compound. so they're protected at night.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
And so we're struggling with that border. I don't want to say traffic.
Yeah.
That comes across. It's real. It's fearful.
It is.
Could you just talk about that and address how you see the AG being able to help in that manner?
Totally right. Look, I live this. I'm not a rancher myself, but I got to know hundreds of ranchers, both big ranchers, small ranchers, and just humble people that want to live out in the country, right? And maybe they don't own hundreds of acres. And during the Biden years, when I was Paxton's deputy, Paxton and I traveled the state meeting with these people because during that time, we were literally being invaded by tens of millions of illegal aliens. And people were having their fences cut all the time. I mean, just like you described. And we talked earlier about like the Satanists. By the way, these cartels are some of the most hideous people. The decapitations, the bodily mutilations. They are dark. I mean, it is bad. There is something spiritually very dark about the way that these South and Central American cartels and gangs work. It's really sick. You've experienced it. You just laid it out just right. And so the spillover effects into law-abiding Texans' properties was tremendous. We were trying to figure out how do we get law enforcement to support these people. I'll rebuild my fence. I'll rewire my fencing one night. It'll be cut the next night. I will go check on the cattle that are spending the night in the barn, and I'll find a group of people that are sleeping there and they're holding their guns. I can't even go into my own barn, right? And they're finding dead bodies all over the place. During the Biden administration, I mentioned earlier that I sued the 46th president 46 times. I won 85% of those cases. About a quarter or a third of those cases were on border security and illegal immigration. My knowledge and strength in this space of securing the border, deporting illegal aliens is so strong that the National Border Patrol Council endorsed me to succeed Paxton as the next Attorney General. They have my full trust and confidence that I am the border security candidate in this race, and I know how to navigate the justice system. Now, fast forward, we're living in a period where President Trump is the president. We have stopped the flow of illegals coming over the border, but those tens of millions of aliens are still here in this country. They're here illegally. They need to be identified, arrested, detained, and deported expeditiously. And so the Attorney General can integrate with the Trump administration, with the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, to facilitate the outflow of illegal aliens that invaded our country. But on top of all that, even putting aside the millions of illegals that are here, the AG stands right at the middle, right in the nexus of federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, and local law enforcement to crack down on these cartels that are facilitating human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, that are still causing problems in our communities. And Texans are unable to enjoy the full blessings of their private property ownership and usage because the cartels are pushing people and exploiting that land to further their operational control of the border, to push their drugs, to push their women and young girls that they're trafficking. And it's got to stop. We need an AG who has a proven track record enforcing the law, securing the border, deporting illegal aliens, and cracking down on the cartels and the human and drug and sex traffickers. And I'm the only one in this race that has that experience. So if you want somebody, if landowners and ranchers want a partner to fix the mess that you laid out, I'm the only guy ready for the job.
All right. So I had shifting gears again. So the going to the energy sector, the windmills, and as we drive around the country, especially in the Abilene area, there are used blades. There are graveyards of used blades,
right,
that just get left behind,
right.
And so we have have some concern that number one, wind energy is very inefficient.
Totally.
And it probably wasn't the best move by any governmental agency to do
Correct.
wind. Has lots of issues, but from your position, is there anything that can be done to make sure these wind energy companies dispose of these blades properly, take care of our environment? You know, that's that's a big deal. Is our environment, although we want to utilize the resources that the earth offers us, we also want to take care of our ecology at the same time. Both can work.
100%.
And so, number one, are you aware of the wind energy blade disposal issue, and what can you address there?
Yeah, look, I first of all, I love this distinction that you've made between being like an environmentalist, which is sort of an radical left ideological movement, and being a conservationist. I'm proud to say I'm a conservationist. I love hunting, fishing, camping, exploring with my wife and my 4 kids. Texas is blessed to have some of the best state parks compared to any other state. We've got some great national parks as well. We love the outdoors. Here we are in Amarillo, right down the street, Palo Duro Canyon. Love camping there. It's beautiful. God has given us a wonderful natural inheritance, and it's our job to steward it. And a lot of times what you find is some of these companies, they will exploit the environment in a way, and they'll do it under the guise of being green energy. And this gets to another point that you made, which is, that wind energy, solar energy, okay, yes, maybe there's some limited use for wind and solar because the sun will shine and the wind will blow, right? But these forms of energy are so desperately inefficient, so wasteful, right? Require so much infrastructure in order to even utilize, only to be quickly dissipated, right? Because of the lack of ability to really store whatever little energy is mustered, that there's actually no market for this, and it requires billions of dollars of government subsidies just to exist, right? And so this is why people call it the Green New Scam. It's a scam, right? We are not going to be saved by more wind turbines, polluting the horizon that we have to drive by, or to see unused and rusting blades just sort of strewn about the Texas landscape, right? That's not going to save us, right? What's going to save us are better and more efficient uses of carbon energy and potentially nuclear technology moving into the next generation. These are things that we can talk about moving forward. The Attorney General plays a critical role in ensuring, number one, that your tax dollars are being used in accordance with state and federal law. And secondly, if they are being used in accordance with state and federal law, that these energy companies are abiding by state and federal environmental regulations. Again, I'm not talking about the environmentalist, greeny, far left liberal, wacko ideological agenda like what we had during the Biden administration, where, when I was Paxton's deputy and suing the ever-living heck out of the Biden administration, a huge percentage of my cases were against the Biden administration because of their environmental abuses, right? They turned the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and different related entities into a weapon against Texas to destroy our energy and our energy sector, our oil and gas sector, to be very punitive against Texas, and then to flood our state with Green New Scam style technologies and infrastructure. And so, number one, we do have state conservation laws, okay? It is illegal for these companies who profited off of the boondoggle of subsidies, the Green New Scam, and then only to then abandon ship and dump their unused infrastructure on our land. They have to abide by state environmental and conservation laws. The AG plays a mission-critical role in, number one, making sure that the money is being used in accordance with state law, and then once it's used, to litigate, investigate, sue, and appeal against those same corporate entities that are not following state conservation law. And so, yes, I'm familiar not only with the issue at a high level, as you laid out, but I'm the only one in this race who has experience doing exactly that thing. Every candidate's going to tell you that they're going to do X, Y, or Z, and you may like what they're saying. Voters may like the words that they're using. But I'm the only one who's actually been in legal combat and delivered legal victories against these kinds of entities. So I don't just talk the talk, but I walk the walk. So
this is you're a very mature man, but you're not as old as I am.
So a very old hairstyle, though.
So in going back and when they passed the Renewable Energies Act, it was not about renewable energy. If you go back to the history of it, it was set to win Iowa for Hillary. And that's what it was all about. That's what it was passed to get her to win Iowa. And her own conniving came in and kind of bit her in the rear end.
Yeah.
In that that was when Barack Obama, he saw it also, and he wound up winning Iowa. But that's what the renewable energy was all about, because those of us that are in agriculture looked at it and said, this is not feasible. This will not work long term. And so it had to be political. And normally what I tell people is when you look at a situation and it doesn't make economic sense, it's political.
Correct. Yeah.
And so,
right.
And so that's what we have. But Aaron, we're coming to a close here, and I've enjoyed the conversation very much. I want to give you a chance to express anything that we didn't cover that you'd like our listeners to know, and I want to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I've enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. It's great to be out here in the Panhandle. I love coming out to Amarillo. I love being in the Panhandle in West Texas. I mean, folks are patriots here, and I love visiting with the patriots. Look, what I would tell you is, I remember we talked about my time in the military, and I reflect now on the first time I ever swore an oath to the U.S. Constitution. I was 22 years old. I know you mentioned that I'm still a fairly young man, although back then I did notice that my hair was going to end up like what it is today. And I raised my right hand as a brand new lieutenant, and I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And as somebody who ultimately deployed to Afghanistan, who grew up in that era of the war on terror, I primarily thought about the foreign enemies to our Constitution. The next time that I swore that oath was in the West Wing, with my wife and 4 kids on my left, and the United States Attorney General on my right. And I raised my right hand. I wasn't in uniform anymore. I was, wearing a suit and a tie. And I said the exact same oath, word for word, both as a Marine officer and a senior executive at the United States Department of Justice. And I had come to really appreciate by that moment, in those intervening nearly 20 years, that even though we do have major foreign threats to the Constitution, we've talked about some of them today on this interview. The primary threats that we are dealing with today, in my view, are the domestic enemies of the Constitution, and they are fighting a bloody war against everything that we hold dear as conservative Republicans up and down the chain of the justice system. I know from personal experience that that's where the hottest fights are right now. Yes, they're happening in the legislature. Yes, they're happening out in the media. They're happening in all of these different arenas. The arena in which I have sustained many battle scars, won many wars, earned many ribbons for valor, if you want to call them that, right, is in the legal system. It's in courts all over the state and the nation.
Right.
We need a lawyer, a chief legal officer of Texas, who is ready to lead those battalions of law enforcement officers, litigators, appellate attorneys, defense attorneys to fight back against the left that is at war with us in the justice system. I believe I'm ideally suited to do that. It's my record fighting those fights that led President Trump to describe me as a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. It's why Paxton endorsed me to succeed him as the next Attorney General, saying Aaron Reitz is the only qualified candidate in this race, and then setting forth my record, going to war in the justice system against big tech, big pharma, the Biden administration, leftists, liberals, socialists, everywhere on every major issue: election integrity, Second Amendment, pro-life issues, pro-family, energy issues, election integrity, border security, you name the issue. And I have delivered for Texas and for Texans up and down the chain of the justice system. The time has now come for voters to choose their next Attorney General. You and I are talking right now in the middle of early voting. Election Day is on March 3rd. We will win in the general election, so the only choice right now that Republicans have is to choose the best Republican to lead this fight into the future. I believe that that's me. And so I would encourage people to vote Aaron Reitz for Attorney General. They could learn more about me on my website, aaronreitz.com, AARONREITZ.com. Follow me on social media. Just search for Aaron Reitz, AARONREITZ. But get to the polls and vote Aaron Reitz for Texas Attorney General.
All right. Well, very good. There we have it. We appreciate you tuning in today and sharing our conversation. Aaron, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kelly.
And we wish you the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.